Thanks, everybody. Hello, good morning. For those who don't know, I am Zac. I am the CEO of Aztec. We are a layer 2 building on top of the Ethereum network with privacy by default. Privacy is a first-class primitive. And so here I want to talk a little bit about privacy, why it's important, why I think that not only is it necessary for blockchain to thrive, why it is an essential missing component that will decide the future of our industry. Click. There we go. I think that the information age, so the rise of the internet, the rise of this mass peer-to-peer communication network, and the rise of AI agents operating within it, has massively increased the overall human prosperity. It has done wonderful things for the world, but it has had a very dark undertone, which is that it is eroding these trust foundations that our society is built upon. Before the proliferation of online networks, when our social spaces were still uniquely physical spaces, it was very easy to forge bonds of trust between individuals and hold people accountable. And nowadays, a lot of our social spaces have moved into the online space where you don't know who you're interacting with, what algorithms are attempting to manipulate you, what corporations are attempting to monetize you. And as a result, we don't trust each other. And I think the technologies that we are all developing here today, these information networks, they are going to be the keystone that brings a lot of this back. So I'm not sure this is going to play. This is a little memento from 1998. So privacy has been around, privacy technology has been around for a long time. This is Hal Finney, one of the OG Bitcoin pioneers, talking about creating zero-knowledge proofs to prove hidden statements all the way back in 1998. Oh, it does play. Hang on. Is it playing? No, never mind. Back then, it took 120 minutes to prove knowledge of a basic SHA hash. Things have improved along since then. But we are the inheritors of a great legacy. This has been a long time coming. So I want to talk a little bit about what are we even doing here? What even is a blockchain useful for? Why blockchain? Why decentralization? And I'm going to do this by talking about this concept of information networks and communication complexity, how a society's ability to be consensus-driven, to be equitable, is, in my opinion, largely a function of its communication complexity, which itself is a function of technology. And I'm going to do this by talking about everybody's favorite topic, or at least certain people, the Roman Empire. So, hands up who here has recently thought about the Roman Empire? Be honest. Be honest. Okay. Well, you're all thinking about it now, so congratulations. Okay, I'm actually going to go a bit further back than Rome. I'm going to talk about ancient Greece. I would say that the concept of the classical Greece democratic city-state is the foundation of our existing consensus-driven societies, of Western democracy. It was very flawed. People fetishized it a lot. It had its problems. But ultimately, it was the first unit of social organization that extended towards an entire city that we know of, where you had a concept of consensus. People would decide amongst themselves collectively what their city should be doing instead of an autocrat or an oligarch. And here's a question: why didn't it scale? Why did it remain as a city-state? Why didn't you have Greece as a democracy in the ancient world, or any larger entity? And I would argue it's because of communication complexity. That was a world back then when, if you had an idea and you wanted to share it, you don't have a printing press. You could write a leaflet, but if you want to distribute that to 100 people, you're writing 100 pamphlets, and most people can't read. The way that you shared ideas was you talked about them peer-to-peer with individuals, and this is a world where information traveled at the speed of a horse. And generally, the information that traveled along these information networks, roads, was the contents of a human brain. This is hugely limiting. And it created a culture and a society where individuals felt very strong bonds towards the people that they knew within their cities, within their polities. And so any kind of inter-city coordination, collaboration, was always very short-term because the individuals within those city-states would always favor their city-state over, at the expense of other city-states if they could. And so what's the kind of the next revolution that enabled something a bit better than a city-state democracy? I would argue it was the printing press, because with the printing press now, your information network, the road, its data bandwidth has massively expanded now, because if you have an idea, you can print a book or a pamphlet and you can share it with thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. This was one of the foundational liberating moments in our society where you could acquire some kind of consensus around shared ideas, shared values. I would argue that the concept of a nationhood, nationalism, is intrinsically tied up with the printing press because it allows for stories to be shared and disseminated to create a culture where you have people separated by relatively large geographic distances that all basically subscribe to the same myths, the same legends around who they are and where they've come from. And so I would call the printing press and the associated mass media that generated around it, newspaper, print broadcast, print, even radio and television broadcasting, it's all the same thing. It's basically a one-to-many style communication. If I have an idea, I can share it with all of you. It's very hard for all of you to share an idea with me. And I need resources and influence to be able to share my idea. I need to be published. I need to be distributed. And so I would argue that since the invention of the printing press, communication styles has basically been this one-to-many mode until the rise of the internet. The internet is really the first technology we have where we possess a many-to-many style communication. Any random person can share an idea, disseminate it, and gain traction with their peers. And this is hugely liberating. It's also hugely disruptive in the same way that the invention of the printing press directly led to the 30 Years' War, which in some parts of Europe killed 70% of all human beings. So good and bad. And so why am I talking about this? Because blockchain is the new information network that extends past the internet. The internet has a problem. You cannot differentiate signal from noise. Everybody has an opinion to share. Not only that, but now we have algorithms and AI agents pretending to be humans sharing their opinions. And we don't know what's real and what's not real, what's valuable, what's not valuable. Blockchain is important because it allows individuals to coordinate amongst each other how to pool, allocate, and distribute assets, money. That can't be faked with an AI agent. It's a foundational expression of human agency, what you spend your resources on. And this is what a blockchain can achieve. This is why, in my opinion, it's such a radical technology. And I would argue, for it to really fulfill its potential, it needs privacy technology. Because right now, blockchain doesn't reach particularly into the real world. The cypherpunk visions of 2015 and 2008 haven't really come to fruition. I'll talk about it a little bit. So I was going to go on a little bit of a segue about information networks and cavemen. I'm afraid I didn't time myself very well, so I'm going to have to say this for another time. It's a good story, though, but another time. Why is privacy important? Why does this new information network that allows for the coordination of assets need privacy technology? First of all, I want to talk about what is privacy technology, because privacy extends far beyond hiding how many assets you have or what you're spending your money on. Privacy tech is all about, at a low level, proving a statement is true without revealing underlying information required to derive that statement. For example, having a UK passport e-signature without revealing the name of the person or their age. Proving I received an email from Facebook without leaking the contents of that email. Privacy is information asymmetry. I know something you do not know, you know something I do not know. And information asymmetries are fundamentally important in our everyday interactions. They are not nefarious, they are completely benign. For example, when you vote in an election, everybody will, your vote gets counted. Everybody will know in aggregate that your voters affected the outcome, but nobody knows how you voted. You know how you voted. That's an information asymmetry. They're important. And they are used to create things like identity technologies, proving that I possess a passport from a certain nation, proving I possess a bank card from a certain bank, even something as simple as proving I have a Twitter account that's over 3 years old with over 1,000 followers. That can be used to prove, not prove, but like give strong indication I'm not a bot. What this is trust infrastructure. Privacy technology is not about trustlessness. It's not about not having to trust each other. It's about creating technologies and mechanisms that allow individuals to more easily trust each other by reducing the surface of what they need to rely on. So here's a question. Here's an elephant in the room that's been bugging me for 7 years. Where's the fundamental value in Web3? Right now, all of the value in blockchain, all of the billions of dollars, is sourced from, I would argue, only 3 locations. You have the value that people place on the consensus of a distributed network. Think Bitcoin. How much are people willing to pay to get a unique record of events? You have the value in dollar-backed stablecoins. And you have the value in stories, entertainment media, basic things think like NFT art, things like that. What's missing from that? Well, what's missing is anything where the value is derived from something in the physical real world. We don't have real-world assets on chain. We don't have like the ownership of physical items, or even something as simple as like intellectual property, or anything ephemeral that's derived from a real-world quantity doesn't exist on chain in any meaningful form right now. And so whilst we're all here because blockchain is a big industry, there's an enormous amount of money in it. Relative to the global financial system, the value of blockchain is a drop in the ocean. And we cannot become mainstream. We cannot make sure that our technology reaches into individuals' lives in a meaningful way without that. I would argue that this is deeply cypherpunk because of what this enables and how we're going to do this. Composability is a foundationally important value proposition of blockchain. It is the value proposition. If you exist in a traditional industry and you want your organization to become more efficient, the canonical solution is vertical integration. You bring your supply chain in-house. You bring your third-party dependencies in-house so that you have fewer middlemen to pay and you can more easily, efficiently optimize and refine for your use cases. This gives large centralized organizations a strong competitive edge over smaller companies, smaller competitors, which I would argue is not good. Composability in Web3 inverts this paradigm because in a distributed network like Ethereum, any piece of software, any library that you deploy, any application, any dApp that you deploy to the network can be used permissionlessly by every other entity in that network. Every node adds value to every other node. And so what this means is you can take the technological stack of a large vertically integrated organization, and you can break it apart and have individual smaller actors providing each individual service on a blockchain platform, while still benefiting from the efficiencies of vertical integration. Composability is why blockchain has become a big thing. If you had to ask for permission from the Ethereum Foundation to deploy a smart contract, Ethereum would not exist. If you had to ask permission from the Uniswap Foundation to use Uniswap in your application, like Uniswap would not exist. And right now, private composability is something which is badly missing, and which is required. Privacy tech is starting to become more widely available, and people are more aware of it. Things like being able to prove the existence, prove that you have received an email from a certain domain without revealing any more information, things like that. But all of these privacy solutions are very bespoke. If I write a dApp that contains a ZK email or ZK TLS or some kind of privacy-preserving aspect, I'm not composable anymore, not easily, because if another application wants to use my smart contract, my software, they have a lot of downstream complexity that they need to incorporate into their application. It's not as simple as just calling a Uniswap smart contract. And without composability, blockchain is nothing. Without composability, privacy technology is this kind of like niche nice to have that interests people. But with composability, it changes blockchain. It changes the world. I'll give some examples that are starting to emerge today. I've mentioned ZK email. ZK passport is a brilliant technology that where you can verify an e-passport digital signature, prove that you possess a passport from a certain nation without revealing anything else. ZK TLS enables relatively trustless attestations from Web 2 applications. You can prove that you've received information from a website, from a web server, and share that with other individuals. And these are going to form the foundation of composability in the future. Because these technologies enable something which is quite powerful, which I'll talk about in a little bit, which is basically making Web 2 composable, taking data fortresses that exist within the Web 2 ecosystem and allowing entities to siphon data from them permissionlessly. But before getting onto that, I want to talk a bit about decentralization and how privacy is not only aligned with decentralization, like the two are deeply, deeply intertwined. I'll give some examples here. So if you're building a dApp that touches the real world, or it touches Web 2, there's a very good chance you're going to need some kind of identity standard, kind of proving who you are in some way. Who here is excited about adding identity standardization into Web 3? I'm grateful. There's more hands than I thought. This is foundationally important. If you cannot link a cryptocurrency account to a real-world identity, then your blockchain can't talk to the real world without a data custodian in the mix. And I want you to consider that. So let's say I'm doing real-world assets on chain, and I'm doing that by having some centralized data custodian who is attesting to the validity of certain cryptocurrency accounts, saying, okay, yes, you can hold this asset, you can hold this asset. If I build a dApp that utilizes that technology, I am not composable anymore, because if another third party wants to use my technology, so let's say I'm doing an exchange for real-world assets, and I want to interact with a smart contract that originates real-world assets. Well, if I need to integrate with their data custodian, what if they say no? I need to ask for permission again. I need to have a relationship with another entity, which is completely unlike what happens on chain today, where everything is completely permissionless. Any random person can just turn up and add some value to the ecosystem. Data custodians break composability, and you can only get rid of those data custodians whilst touching the real world with strong privacy technology, with zero-knowledge cryptography that can allow for trustless attestations about what's happening in the real world. Once you have that, then you can build decentralized protocols, DeFi-type systems, that can still have some kind of understanding on who you are as an individual without leaking that information. You can create non-custodial applications, cryptocurrency wallets, that still interact with assets and value originated in the real world. And in my opinion, that is quite wild. I mean, the idea of a non-custodial wallet is radical. People outside of blockchain still struggle to wrap their heads around that. And that's for wallets that hold what are ultimately largely synthetic assets, like Dogecoin. Extending that to a world where you are interacting peer-to-peer with a smart contract, proving who you are to that smart contract, to an algorithm and nobody else, and then using that to be authorized to trade and transfer and hold real-world assets, that is absolutely revolutionary. And it's going to happen. If not this year, next year, or the year after, eventually. So why is privacy going to make Ethereum Cypherpunk again? This concept of a ZK transformer is one of the most radical things you can do with ZK today. Basically, the whole entirety of Web3 is based around these monetization models of monetizing your data. The social media networks will have information about who you are that they control in the data fortress that they use to monetize. And I just want to highlight how strange this is. This is your data about you. It should be yours, but it's not. It's owned by a company, and it's used it's leveraged at your expense largely to generate revenue. And zero-knowledge cryptography technology can be used to basically crack open these data silos, because if a third-party application wants, for example, information about Facebook, for example, Farcaster wants to import their user profiles from Facebook, well, Facebook's not going to cooperate. And you can't trust the user because they're going to lie. But the user can send you a zero-knowledge proof that they received information from Facebook using ZK email, using ZK TLS, things like that. And it basically allows for a level of composability between applications that do not want to be composable. Now, I wish I had time for this, but I've got 6 seconds, so I will move to my conclusions. Maybe run over 10 seconds. Ethereum will be cypherpunk again with these strong privacy-preserving technologies. You add privacy, identity standards, private composability into Ethereum, and you create an information network that has teeth, where individuals can coordinate and communicate how to distribute and disseminate their assets in all contexts. It allows for a radical new way of living, of organizing oneself that doesn't exist in the world today. It makes the many-to-many communication style created by the internet understandable and digestible and composable. Human-centric networks that are governed by human beings instead of AI agents, where we use our own data however we damn well please, without having to ask for permission from entities that are accustomed to owning information about who we are. And we can distinguish ourselves and what we do through trustless attestations. We can distinguish our creative works, our desires, our hopes, our fears from the ocean of statistically generated, AI-generated noise that is saturating our existing information networks. That's how we're going to make Ethereum cypherpunk again. Thank you for listening.
Zac, thank you so much. We have time for a couple of questions here, and I'd like to start with one. Legacy GAOs somewhat tolerate the transparent chains. Will they tolerate the private ones?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the solution to this is to be slightly facetious, deliver shareholder value, demonstrate value. Basically, you can create alternative financial models in Web3 that use strong privacy technologies that are just simply better than what we have at the moment. So financial incumbents like the US, well, it's going to be a tough sell for privacy technologies. But for countries that aren't the US, that still have large financial industries, perhaps like the UK, that are looking for comparative advantage, fostering a technology that allows for much lower barriers to entry, much greater competition, more efficiency, is unbelievably attractive. There is a giant pot of money on the table waiting for a government that is willing to embrace not just blockchain technology, but privacy-preserving technology in a big way, because it'll turbocharge their economy.
Another question here. Doesn't on-chain ID pose censorship risks?
Yes. Not going to deny it. So imagine if you're using passport signatures to validate who you are, and, well, you get de-citizened. Well, you're in trouble. So it's a spectrum. I think if you have a universal identity standard, that poses much greater censorship risks than a holistic identity standard. What I would like to see happen is like a concept of who somebody is coming from a large, diverse set of sources. So not just things like passport signatures, or I could prove I possess like a UK government account, I used to pay taxes, or I could do things like prove I possess a bank card, prove I have an email from a utilities provider for a physical address in the UK, prove I have a Twitter account with a lot of followers, prove I have a LinkedIn account that's been active for 5 years. Basically, you have all these little attestations about who you are that you build up into a concrete mass that provides overwhelming proof. And that kind of system is much more censorship resistant than relying on a single source of truth.
How will we reconcile the need for tracing and indexing to provide useful UI/UX with the obfuscating encryption required from on-chain privacy?
It's a very good question. So we have some solutions at the moment in Aztec. So like, how do you handle shared state obfuscation with UI/UX? Well, in Aztec, the way we handle it is we have this thing called a PXE, private execution environment, runs locally in a user's device that could be queried like a blockchain node for information. Longer term, this will be a solved problem through FHE, basically PIR, private information retrieval. You can store your data encrypted on a third-party server, make queries about that data, get it returned to you, and the third-party server has no understanding of what's happened, but they can still handle your request. It's a few years out, but that's going to be the future.
Can you debunk the age-old, if you have nothing to write, you have nothing to fear?
How many people here are comfortable yelling out their yearly salary? Yeah, not that many people, right? Yeah, you have something to hide. Everybody has something to hide. Like, what is a human being? We are the difference between the mask that we present to outsiders and our internal selves, full of contradictions, insecurities, hopes and dreams and fears and petty vanities. We are all a miserable pile of secrets, and we need to embrace that.
One last question. What are the main limitations of smart contracts on ZK chains?
You mean privacy-preserving chains? What are the limitations? Well, I mean, the main one is they barely exist right now in the real world. I mean, you have Alio that have launched. ASIC will be launching next year. I would argue that there are some user experience issues where you have to generate zero-knowledge proofs client side. That can take some time. But ultimately, I would argue that it's foundationally, I don't think there will be any user issues. I think the technology will lag behind the transparent world, but eventually it's always going to be playing catch up. But you can expect the same end state as the transparent chain when it comes to UI UX.
Zac, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.